Hello and welcome to Conscious Living. I'm Wendy Garrett on Empower Radio. Iva, thank you so much for doing what you did. This is an amazing journey. Iva has talked with me before. Iva Peele, her son, and his now wife went on this amazing journey to visit an indigenous culture community who had some very important information they wanted to share, and chose for the first time to share it with us in Western society in a way that might be helpful for us to kind of revisit the way we view our planet and the things that we are doing at this important time in transition into a newer way of connecting with the planet. Iva, thank you so much for coming back to talk with me more on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here. Good to talk to you again.
I tell you what, these kinds of experiences change us in so many ways. But I want you to share what got you to do this in the first place and how it opened. What were you doing in your life that made you take this huge plunge?
Well, I think in 2003, my family moved. My husband and youngest son, my dad Jack, who's in the movie, and my daughter had left home. We moved to a farm in the Hudson Valley in New York, about 2 hours north of New York City. And we'd lived in New York, and I loved it. You know, I thought it was great. This was totally like a great life. And we moved to this farm, and it was an extraordinary venture. But I, for the first time in my life, encountered genuine loneliness. I mean, it was a fascinating experience and not a very pleasant one. And my husband gave me a camera, actually, to try and keep me from, I think, running back to the city and going back to the theater and all the things that I said I was going to leave behind. And I began walking out into the land and taking pictures of the land. And one day I literally shouted out to the land. I was so lonely. And I learned that there is actually a conversation with the land, which sounds so kind of, you know, sort of silly and new agey, but actually that it's a profound conversation. But that didn't really abate the loneliness. And so actually one day driving along, I said out loud that I needed help. I had never experienced feeling depressed. I'd never experienced anything like this before, and I needed help. And a friend called me 2 weeks later and said, I wanted you to meet these people. They are taking a group of people to Peru, and I've signed you up. And I just said yes. I didn't look back. I didn't research Peru. I'd never thought of going to such a place. I wasn't on any kind of path. I just said yes, and I went to Peru, and it was extraordinary. Just from the moment I arrived and then I went back about 4 or 5 times. And on the 5th time, I was going to a ceremony to reactivate the solar disk, and I had friends who were working on another film, and they said they could bring a camera. And Jorge Luis Delgado, who is in this film about the Q'ero, said, if you're bringing cameras, you must meet the Q'ero elders and travel with them and do their ceremonies, if they will agree. And they said yes, and there was just no looking back. We went for 2 weeks and realized that we had no idea what was going on, and that Jack, Julie, and I then had to return and travel with them for a month and a half and learn what this was really about. So it just sort of went basically from me saying yes.
Amazing how that works.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you were hearing the earth speak to you, because I think that's a real crucial element here, because that's what they're connecting to as they give us and share their message. What was that like?
It was really an interesting experience, because I began doing things like, for instance, I have a series of photographs. By this point, I was filming with a pinhole camera. I had moved on from my point-and-shoot camera and really had learned about photography. And I suddenly had this idea that I should get a mask and put it in the trees and photograph this face coming out of the trees. And I had no idea why I was doing it, but I just did it. I went to a Halloween store and got a mask and began doing it. And then I was researching about the people who come from this land, the Iroquois people, the Mohican people, and they have a story about how the longhouse was, their longhouses that they lived in, how they came to be. And it was that two boys were out in the woods one day, and a face appeared to them out of the trees and told them what to do. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, the land was speaking to me in this kind of way.
Yes, yes. And giving you memories.
And giving me memories and guiding me. And it wasn't a language, it wasn't words. It was just an impulse to get a mask. And then I began photographing what this ancient story was, and I didn't know the story.
And see, that, I think, is what is amazing about what's happening right now. People like you are doing things in so many different ways and making connections that at first feel a bit, well, it's disconcerting because it's, where is this information coming from and why do I want to do this? And you identified yours as being lonely, very, very lonely.
Mm-hmm.
I think there has to be some kind of a calling or an impulse, some kind of a crisis that creates this moment of looking elsewhere, instead of going to the movies or, doing alcohol or some way to drown it out, to say, what is this? I need help. And when that happens, the world shifts. Yeah,
and it really does. It's hard for people to believe that it's that simple, but I think when you stand open-hearted and really genuinely from the depths of your being say, I need help, help apparently really does come.
Now, when the movie, it's amazing to see what you guys are doing. I have, thank you for the preview, but there is also so much going on that is really hard to track it because I know just from my own experience with these kinds of things that this is a very, very intimate relationship, an intimate connection you're making. And there's so much more going on beneath the surface that you could have several movies. How many hours of footage did you have to work with?
Oh my gosh, we had like 150 hours that we had to whittle down to, and it's still too long, that we had to whittle down to 70 minutes. And it really could be several movies.
Yeah, you want a series, or I want a series. I want to know, here, part one, part two. But, and maybe that'll happen because this is the beginning of the story and asking us for help and asking people to become more aware and share and become proactive instead of fearful. There's a lot to that. So when you went, this was your calling, and you invited your son to come along, and he was the camera guy. So in some ways, he kind of got left up.
It's really interesting. Yep. He agreed to come to the solar disc ceremony, and my husband came. Actually, my entire family except my daughter agreed to come on this, and I think really because they thought, well, how cool, we're going to go do this ceremony at Lake Titicaca with all these indigenous people, and we're going to go on this big hike. And they said yes to come.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Jack, what the most interesting thing is that Jack had he had a profound experience that he wasn't expecting.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, okay. And so what was the result of that?
Well, he and Julie are moving from the city. The point of the movie really is that nature and Pachamama, which is what the Andeans call Mother Earth, is everywhere, including a city as intense as New York. But they are leaving the city, and it's hard to speak for him, but I would say that his perception of what's important has completely shifted. And that's amazing because, he's 27. So it's shifted at the beginning, as he's beginning his adult life, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That, I think, is what is indicated or implied when you're making this tremendous leap of faith and immersing yourself in a different culture and then basically having a communion with the divine or with a higher source through these elders, these wisdom keepers who are saying, hey, look, you might have forgotten this and let's help you. As you go through those ceremonies, they are potent. So even watching the film, this is a potent ceremony that they have agreed to share, which is incredible.
It's incredible that they agreed to share it. And especially Lorenzo's father is one of the last high priests, the alto messiacs, they call them. And I think that we would relate to that as what we more think of as a shaman. I mean, the alto messiacs go out into the cosmos and bring information back, and they walk in two worlds all the time. And there are a few amongst the Caro, but Don Martin is one of the last of the old, has the old knowledge. And he agreed to do these ceremonies with us on film. And it was, we kind of, the whole time, we're really sort of like, okay, yes, okay. We kind of didn't know why it was happening, but we just kept doing it. And each ceremony, as you say, is so potent. I really think it must restructure you molecularly. They do something to you.
Well, and with your permission, because you're going into it as a willing participant. There's a huge thing to be said for that as an allowing, a way of being that says, I invite and I allow. I am a participant instead of there's a victim thing of, well, this was done to me but this is a whole different kind of relating.
Oh, no. Yeah, this is, I suppose if you didn't allow it, nothing would happen. I mean, I guess you could, prevent, it's not like they have power over you.
No, that's I guess what I wanted to point out is that this is an agreement.
Oh, completely, it's an agreement. We absolutely agreed, and sometimes we didn't know what we were agreeing to. For instance, in the lake carpi.
Oh yeah. Okay, I said yes. Wait.
Yes, exactly.
Wait.
Really, there were a lot of times when we were driving, and then it was like they told us to wear bathing suits, so we knew it was something to do with getting wet. But when we saw this lake, this freezing cold-looking lake with black water, and it had no edge, it didn't have a shore, it just had reeds. You had to jump off the reeds into the water. I started laughing to myself. Of course, I had to go first all the time because I was the mother.
Throw mama from the train is what comes to mind.
Yeah, exactly.
She survives.
And then my mother's voice was in my head saying, if someone told you to jump in a lake, would you do it?
Oh, yeah. Apparently.
But apparently, yes. And actually, for me personally, the lake carpi and the water carpi at Tipan were for me personally the most profound. Something utterly shifted.
Okay.
I mean,
see, this is where it gets very, very difficult to translate into words. Because from the time in 2010, when you first left the house, packed the suitcase and all that and went, and to now, there has to have been a major result in terms of your whole way of viewing and dealing and focus and your goals. Is that wrong? Am I assuming something
you're
that's
100% correct. No, that's correct. And in fact, a little bit, some of that time was taken up with, some of that focus or that shift was taken up with making the film. And now the film is finished in this incarnation of it. And so we're, figuring out how to present it out. But sort of I feel a little lost again because my perception has completely shifted. I actually experience things so differently than I did before, and not very many people completely really know what I'm talking about. And that sounds sort of weird, but it's true.
I understand. Believe me. Yeah. I understand.
Okay, good.
So how do you, you're saying you're feeling out of sorts again. So how are you managing that? So is there a new goal? Is there a second, immersion?
I've decided that what I have to do is stay on this path. And so I've decided that I have to completely immerse myself in it, that for whatever reason it happened to me, I said yes. I have this other kind of perception now, and I just have to accept that what was the genesis, the seed of this was a kind of a loneliness, and that loneliness has not exactly gone away, but that it's part of a path, and I have to follow it. I choose to follow it.
See, that's the amazing part, is that you're still driven without knowing that you're driven to continue and to go forward.
Mm-hmm. It's sort of what I was saying to you, when we were chatting before about moving to Hawaii, part of the year, because my life is here. I love my husband. I don't have an intention of leaving the structure of my life, but I really feel called there. And Lorenzo actually said to me, he said, it's because of the water carpi, because you connected to all of the oceans and you're being called by the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very powerful pull. And the interesting thing is, in my stuff, I keep getting that we have this amphibious connection. And so when I was seeing that you guys were doing this ceremony to retrieve the solar disk from Lake Titicaca, I'm like, aha, there's this amphibious thing coming back. And this
That's
sense
right.
of being one with the water. And it makes, you're talking to people about that, and it's like, oh, okay.
I know.
But I can't make it go away because
that's exactly right.
So
and
true
it's
and
very
real.
Logical. We begin our lives in a womb in water.
Mm-hmm.
Our body is made largely of water. Our blood flows through our veins as liquid. It's salt, like salt water. Yet we've made this decision in our culture that we're completely separate from all of that. And really we're not. The water that flows through the rivers and the water that is in the ocean and the water that is our blood and the water that was in the womb is all one thing.
Masaru Emoto, who does the water messages from the water, is fabulous.
Yeah. And so thoughts can change the molecular structure of water. And we're largely water. So our thoughts change our molecular structure.
Bruce Lee, I think when he's talking about being connected, he says the one thing you need to be is fluid, like water. Water goes through everything. Be fluid. It isn't. It's just a different way of thinking and of being. When you talk about Taoism, that's the same thing. In the flow, the language that we have to kind of convey this way of being, this way of knowing, this lifestyle, all speaks to this.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
I mean, the thing is that we already know it. We have the language for it already. We talk about it all the time. I think what we're being asked to do now is to realize that those words and that way of speaking is real. It's
well,
not
the Native
separate.
Americans might say to walk your talk.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, guys. Yeah, I got lots of flowery language, and it's really pretty, but you're talking in circles and not doing anything. So that I do think that's what this time is about. This is a very significant day, December 5th. There are a lot of big things in terms of changes happening that we may not be able to see in the news headlines of the world, but from the indigenous perspective, these times have been written about, and they all have a clue that Western culture is just trying to figure out and do the math on before they'll accept that the progress is happening, whether they know it or not. Does that make sense?
I know, it's interesting to me because really big things are happening. I mean, New York was just underwater last month.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know what it's going to take to get us to, as a culture, to go, not just, oh dear, we're victims of this, but we're part of it. What can we do? We can actually help this. We can work with what we're doing that causes this and stop it, because we can't live without the earth in a human form.
Well, there are glimpses, there are bits and pieces that are being shown. One was the other headline about New York having zero violent crime for 24 hours, which hasn't happened in the history of or recent history anyway. And that's enormous.
Enormous.
In terms
and the
of
way everyone
change.
came together and helped each other. You know? It's amazing.
I think part of it, these disasters and these crises, these are just the tip of the iceberg, because there are a lot of other things that have been said about in our own natural earth changes that are coming becoming visible in front of us. The ice melts, all of the things that are happening with our environment. That speaks to a huge transition that we're going to have to make in our way of being on this planet. And I think that's just right in line with all of the prophecies that say there are going to be some major shifts and changes in your future, in your timeline, and you're going to be alive for this one way or the other. What you're doing, Iva, is you're taking a proactive stance and saying, what can I do to help get the word out? How can I shift? And you're changing. So basically you are modeling what is happening in your own life as a result of what you have learned.
I think so. I guess so, yeah. Because I realize that actually you can't really tell people things. You can only just do it. And as you do it, people begin to see, okay, I see. Maybe we should all, for instance, moving to this farm and becoming organic farmers when we'd lived in the city, that was a very strong impulse. Before any of this began, despite the loneliness, whatever, we both did, my husband and I, had a very strong impulse that it was really important to remember how to grow food and how to grow it with as little impact on the land as possible. How to live very simply, heat your house with a wood-burning stove. Not that everybody particularly has to do that, but just to remember a way of living that we've really forgotten.
The thing about that, because those have been my impulses for years, and shifting back into that way of sensing your environment and sensing those calls, it makes you a different kind of human being, because you're more, I think, in some ways aware, but the big thing is you're more compassionate about what you are doing and the impact that it may have. It doesn't mean that overnight you're going to change everything. I want to come back after the break with Iva and talk more about the show, the film, and what you can expect when you see it, because there'll be a preview. But we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about the show and the kinds of things that happened when they were in that, for a month and a half, environment, doing their research and doing the special ceremonies. This is Conscious Living on Empower Radio. I'm Wendy Garrett. Stick around. Welcome back. Conscious Living on Empower Radio. I'm Wendy Garrett. My guest today is Iva Peele. We're talking about The Road to Curo, A Journey Home. And there are so many things that happen in this that you have to be there, in terms of you're getting these tremendous experiences just in the way that you're being reconnected, retuned, attuned, aligned, engaged, awakened to, in some way, the mysteries of the cosmos, the stars, the earth, the water, all of this stuff that's happening. How do you explain to somebody who hasn't been there what that was about and why, without seeing the movie, why it was such a profound shift?
how would I explain? I think I try to begin with explaining something concrete here in tangible life. You know, for instance, how you feel if you actually just go and sit outside in meditation, and you begin to feel the less separate in your body. You begin to realize that the trees move, and the wind moves through the trees, and the birds fly in gusts across your vision, and that you're part of that. And then when you take each of these elements, that their idea is that their way of dealing with their emotional distress is by reconnecting with nature. And so we go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, or we do something to alleviate emotional distress, or what they call heavy energy. Mm-hmm. And they actually have made a ceremony that allows you to release the heavy energy by reconnecting to different elements. And as you release the heavy energy and reconnect to the stars, for instance, then the light energy, they call it, from the stars fills you because you've left space for it. Mm-hmm. And in that filling, you remember that we're not separate from the stars. Does that make sense? If you haven't seen the movie, you weren't there.
It's a way to invite the transcendent experience. And the thing is, though, that you were doing this for a greater purpose. I think that's also important, too. You weren't doing this just because you wanted a lark. You'd been to Peru several times, and this time you felt a need to help share a message. So it was more like a duty, a calling that said, I'm here for a purpose and I have a mission. That's a different way of being, which then I think empowers you with certain gifts because you have agreed and you have given yourself as an agent for change. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yes, that completely makes sense. And in fact, one of the trips to Peru, before anything about a movie about going with cameras came up, before the solar disc ceremony had even been decided, Jorge took us to a place in Machu Picchu, I think, and he called it "You're having a wedding with yourself." And I remember in that wedding with myself, I agreed to be of service. And I suppose really that when I made that agreement in that powerful place, that then everything that followed because I made that agreement.
See, that makes sense to me because when I was doing my own stuff and agreeing to listen to the things that I was hearing, it was the way I described it was deciding to get married to a union with God or union with the divine. And you're using the exact same words, married to myself or married to spirit. It was just an amazing thing of saying, okay, I will commit, I will immerse, I will become more aware and allow this to help me. And it made some profound changes in my life and my view of the world. Now, it didn't make me not Wendy.
No, exactly.
The faults are still very, very much present. Mm-hmm. But there's a different viewpoint. It doesn't matter. If I'm doing it for a higher good, then I'll get through it. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes us more human, is the ability to say, I'm doing the best, or my intent is to offer the best in this way of being, so that it might help somebody else who's struggling and who can't quite get there and who is what you're describing, desperately alone. Because for me, that went away. I don't have that. And once that connection was made, that was amazing. There's never a feeling of being alone.
No, I don't feel alone. I somehow think alone and loneliness are different things.
Yes,
weirdly.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But it is true that you don't. And then at the same time, I think part of the saying yes in service is remaining utterly human, because that's what we're doing. That's our experience. So separating and James Wanless, who made the Voyager Tarot deck and is in the movie, he says it so beautifully. He says people want to go high to the light, but really you have to go to the ground. You have to get grounded. You have to be on the earth. You have to be human. And then you can go to the light, and as part of being human.
What I was given was you have to be fully human to be fully divine. And that's like the Zen. You have to be all of it and embrace all of it, because you cannot have one without the other. It's just
the warts,
who we
the
are.
bumps, all of it.
So what is the message? Because they have given you a chore, a little homework that you're supposed to share.
Okay, so the message is very simple. When we were talking about your thoughts can change the molecular structure of water, our heavy energy, our
baggage,
yeah. If we don't release it, we create discord in much more than just ourselves, much more than just other people, but actually in the earth and in the cosmos. That our job simply is to work on our own heavy energy to release it, and that the earth will eat it. And the earth apparently can eat our heavy energy, and that our job is to work on ourselves by each of us opening our own hearts, releasing the heavy energy, receiving light energy, that one by one we will change the consciousness of being human.
Now, there's a word for that.
What?
There's a word for that. It's called ascension.
Ascension, I guess so. Then that's what they're saying right now. This time period, what they call a new Pachacuti, is also the Teri Paipacha, which is the time to remember who you are, the time to find yourself.
Yeah.
And but the thing is that we have to agree, because we have free will. We don't have to do it. But Lorenzo says, if everybody doesn't remember respecting Pachamama, if everybody doesn't remember respecting themselves, if they don't remember these ways of releasing heavy energy, it's going to make it very difficult to live on the earth.
Well, again, it comes back to every action has a result. And when we're doing things that are pouring pollutants into our oceans, when we do have a natural disaster that involves flooding, all the pollutants that are in that ocean now have nowhere else to go but in our backyard. So It's that thing of, guys, your planet is aging. It's evolving. It will not always be pristine unless you try to help maintain it. And so I think that's the big message right now, that we're at a crossroads. That if we continue, this is a normal, natural process for the planet, but which means we're not responsible for the planet evolving in that way. It's part of the way nature works. We all work, but we are responsible for maybe keeping the home space a little cleaner in the process, if that's possible, because there's a lot of communities that have to cooperate that are right now pouring pollutants into the oceans, into the land, into the air, all across the board.
And I think what the Karo are saying, and what I understand from doing these karpais, which reconnects you to each of the elements, is that if you have genuine respect for yourself, then you automatically will have respect for your environment. If you respect yourself genuinely, why would you want to burn down your house? Yeah. It doesn't make sense. It's some kind of some disconnect has happened to us to even consider pouring pollutants into the ocean.
Well, there's a distance and a disconnect. We don't see the process and in general terms, most of us are not connected to that all of that industry that is creating the byproducts, creating the fuels, creating all of this to help us keep our cars going and warm our houses, all that stuff. We just go home and turn up the heat, or cook with a microwave, which then changes the content of our food, or add more preservatives so that it will last on the shelf until the next major shifting in the Mayan calendar, I guess. Oh, cool!
If we're still here, yeah,
yeah. So, but that's the thing. It's when you went to where. The beauty of your experience is you got away from everything to be able to see that it's possible to live without all the little incidentals of being able to turn the 5 o'clock news on and the world doesn't stop because you missed the news.
They live up there at 16,000 feet in these little stone houses. They have never had electricity. There's no running water. There's never been a car. It takes 2 days on horseback to get there. I mean, they walk, but it was so high that they said, high in the air, the altitude was so high they were worried about us walking. So I was very grateful for that little horse.
Oops.
Yeah.
Get the stretchers out. Well, yeah, 16,000 feet, you're going to feel it a lot, the altitude sickness. Did you guys have any of those little issues to work through as you made your adjustment?
Weirdly, we did not have altitude sickness problems at all, which was really amazing to me. And I've been now to Keros twice, and also to big festival Coloriti. They're all so I spent 10 days up at that high altitude. I don't know why we didn't. I mean, I guess we were just lucky.
I'm guessing it's the energy, the lightness. Basically, when you do those kinds of things, there is an amazing protection that comes with it. And that is part of what I have learned, is that when there is a greater good, then you become one with that energy, and there's no reason to have any dis-ease because you're in the flow. You're in the flow.
Because, you're in the flow, and the ceremonies, the karpais, are about releasing the heavy energy. I mean, the way I can describe this, the subtlety of the connection is, I began to notice that after we'd begun doing the karpais, well, first of all, the very first one, nothing is really explained. It's not like they don't sit down and go, okay, now we're going to do a ceremony and you're supposed to release your heavy energy and this is supposed to happen. None of that is explained. You're just taken out. They spread out a textile. You lie down on it. Suddenly they put all these stones on you, and suddenly there are 4 people whispering in this language that sounds like the wind and the rivers in your ears and ringing bells over you and whispering and blowing into your hands and into the top of your head. And, you're sort of lying there going, what's happening? And suddenly I understood that I was supposed to release. And this huge wave of emotion came over me, and I just let it go. I let it go into the earth. And when I stood up and they took the stone off of me, all I could see was light. I couldn't see any form. I could just see light. And so you begin to understand in an experience like that something's happening that you can't quantify. It's beyond experience that we're taught in our world, but it happened. So,
and see, that's when you're saying there's no words, there's the experience. That's the proof in the pudding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then the way I could bring it back to form and describe it is that I began to notice I lost my voice at one point. There was a sort of a terrible flu going around. Lorenzo had it, and we all shared water bottles. So I got some version of this flu-y cold thing. What I noticed is that if I ever thought a complaint, just a tiny complaint, I began getting sicker. If I thought completely positively, like just kept my spirits up and kept positive, the ailments went away.
Basically, the flu was a teaching. The flu was giving you an opportunity to learn and have a real concrete experience to basically to set that knowledge.
Yes, because the experience of the karpai was intangible in terms of bringing it into form to share with other people. But the flu and what happened to me with the flu and my thoughts was very tangible and almost instant.
See, that I love, because that gives anyone who is listening the opportunity to say right now, whatever illness, ailment, dis-ease they're feeling, there is a consciousness inside of them that can address, if they shift their thoughts, that issue and release it. It's a higher way of engaging the world and the environment, of going in and saying, what have I brought to this equation that I can release? And it may not be from this lifetime. Now we're getting into a different topic, so I won't go there. Yeah. Okay, fine.
No, but I agree. I agree, yeah.
Come back to the thing of, when you feel this, you know it. When you've experienced it, you don't have to try and sell anybody on it, because it's your knowing. You can just share it and say, this is what happened. And see, that I think is what you're able to do now, because you have gone through this process and you have help. Now, are you still connected with the carer? Are they doing any additional sharing of information? And is there like a, some kind of agreement for that?
Well, they are, different carer are sharing information. I know that Lorenzo feels it's really important for us to go back as often as we can. And in fact, I'm working on bringing Lorenzo to Teotihuacan in Mexico to work with a friend of mine who's a Mexican healer to teach. So there is constant sharing of information, and we became compadre. Lorenzo became my compadre, and I became his comadre, because we became godparents to his children, and he married Jack and Julie. And in their mind, we are inextricably family now. I mean, it became more than these people going and filming something. We're his students and his family.
Yeah.
So I think he's often sharing information with me. Now this gets out into the he often is sharing information with me, and it's not in a linear time frame. It's in the dream plane. It's in a dream plane. Yeah.
Right. Well, because we're always connected there. It's just some people don't bother to tune in, or they misread some of that stuff. But yeah, that's and with their way of being isolated, so they don't have all the constant distraction of what we have going on 24/7. Their thoughts, for me, seem to be a lot more clearer, and they make their point.
Oh, absolutely.
Fast.
Oh, and I can give you a concrete example that just happened today about how we communicate with each other. We have a Facebook page, and on the Facebook page, I've been selling some of Lorenzo's textiles, the woven cloths and things for him, because that's how his family makes money. And they shear the sheep, they spin the wool, they dye the wool, they weave the textiles, and they also weave the prayers into the textiles. So they're really special. Now, I don't have any left. So I don't speak Spanish well enough, I'm embarrassed and ashamed to say, to speak directly to Lorenzo about something this complicated as ordering specific kinds of textiles on the phone. But Julie speaks beautiful Spanish. So Julie's been meaning to speak to him, but she's been busy, blah, blah, blah. She did finally speak to him today. He's already made the textiles. They're all ready.
He was just waiting for the call. Okay, it's going to be any day now. Darn, yeah. And the call comes in. Cool.
Yeah.
See?
He's already made them. So that's a concrete example to me of exactly what we're speaking about.
Yeah. See, that's what the thing is that is the real message of me, of getting back to nature, getting back to the land, simplifying. It is not about the stuff as much as it is cleaning up your mind and your thoughts and getting rid of the extra garbage in there that you really don't need.
No, you really don't need it. And the land actually has so much information for us that we don't, Of course this is true. We've known this forever. Every single one of us is an indigenous person from a culture ultimately. And each of these cultures had folklore and ways of communicating with the land. But we've just forgotten them. In a relatively short period of time, we've forgotten them.
But it's easy to do when all of the little seductive elements of lattes and espressos and cheesecake and
Well,
outdoor swimming pools, all these things are
even
here.
In Caro, they're forgetting them because their lives are very, very difficult. Many of their children are leaving and going down to the cities. And many more people have come in to influence them, and then the missionaries have come in to influence them, and their tight little sequestered culture is being eroded, and they're forgetting them. This is another reason they really wanted to give us the information.
Yes, so it doesn't get lost. You're in a place, Hawaii, with the kahuna, which they've had tremendous cultural changes and challenges with their beliefs, and they have a beautiful spiritual connection to the world too. So I think that might be another avenue that eventually you will be able to remind us about. It might be the words. We're going to have to wrap in 4 minutes, so I want you to go ahead and share. You have a screening, a preview coming up in Hawaii?
We do. We have a screening coming up. The Ocean Film Festival has very kindly is allowing us to do a screening of the film in one of the theaters with their equipment and everything for whomever would like to come on January the 6th at 3:30 p.m., I think, in Waimea in Hawaii, which somehow is, I think, significant, and I'm not sure why it's significant yet, but there's a connection between Peru and Hawaii. So, and
it's also significant. It's in 2013, which kind of lets you know, okay.
Yeah, it's the very first week of 2013.
So after all the hullabaloo has worked itself out, do you have plans for the 21st?
The 21st, I will be in Hawaii, and I have two separate plans. I'm going to be on a boat with the dolphins and the whales, and then I'm going to do a ceremony with my friend Patty in Hawaii, up at her property, just for women, a sort of sacred bath ceremony.
I like those plans.
Yeah, do they sound good?
Yeah, that's a good plan. Well,
one way or the other. I feel called to be out on the ocean that day. So
yeah, I think it's a great way of doing that. That amphibious thing is blowing right in there, blasting everything open. Okay, so for others who would like to see your film, there's a teaser on YouTube and on Vimeo, and when will this be available?
We're working on that right now. It will be available in the next few months. The best way to find out is to go to our Facebook page, which is The Road to Caros, A Journey Home, or Messages from the Andes. And on that page, I will be posting information about the film, when it's coming out, how you can buy a DVD, if it's going to be on YouTube, what avenue it's going to reach the world. We're still waiting for film festivals, et cetera. So,
can I make a suggestion? Would you put, another trailer up there of maybe a tease of the ceremonies, of the ones that might be most impactful at this time? Because I think that really is a neat way of shooting. That's a great idea.
I'll see if I can get hold of Jack to do that little bit of editing. That's a great idea. Yes.
Well, it just makes it so much more personal, and people do get a benefit from that ASAP. You may not feel it the minute you're seeing it, but this stuff tends to go in and percolate.
It's true, because I think that in watching the ceremonies, you are receiving them. The film is, in fact, a karpai.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's why it starts the way it does. I don't know if you'll change that for mass distribution, but it starts with that little invocation that is an opportunity to become, I think, in sync with the message you're about to receive. Just my own personal view, of course. It's totally
I love that. That's great. That's perfect.
Okay. I love talking with you. I think that you're doing some extraordinary exploring and growing and working and sharing, and I appreciate all of that. So please keep your motivation and enjoy the ocean on the 21st. That'll be a fabulous, fabulous day.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Iva Peele, The Road to Keros. Go ahead, Iva.
No, nothing. It's okay.
Okay. A journey home. Thanks for listening to Conscious Living on Empower Radio. Have a wonderful day and think the highest thoughts. They do come back.